Look up! It's a bird, it's a plane, we've got a show.
Everybody come on, let's get down. Get down.
So if you're listening to the show, we announced last week that we're doing a bit of a rebranding, me and Anvriola. And but my friend Freekbass here has given me permission to keep the music for the transition. Thank you. We need a whistle or like a whip at the beginning of the new show that Aaron wants. I got to figure something out there. How's everybody doing?
Great.
Very well.
Yeah.
Very excited about July.
Yes, absolutely. Let's go around the table real quick. I've got Freekbass, Bob Cesca, Professor Zaki Hasan. Holy moly, what a panel. Freekbass, let's start with you, buddy. What's been going on? TikTok star?
Dude, I mean, yeah, I'm knee deep. I thought I was deep in it before, but I just got back from Los Angeles. I was out there at TikTok all week. We were doing content, doing live streaming. I go to the TikTok Live Awards back in Los Angeles in January. Then the next week I go to London, England for the global TikTok Awards, and it's again that's my life right now, pretty much. Yeah.
Could you have predicted this portion of your career 3-4 years ago?
No, not even a year and a half ago. I would have said you were like, no way, you're bonkers. And then just life takes you on strange journeys, but it's been incredible, and we're getting ready. I can't announce it yet, but there's one thing that really happened really cool when I was in Los Angeles with I'll just say a recording studio that I'm doing some stuff with, and we're getting ready to do something related to the TikTok live streaming world there too as well, music related, which is going to be super amazingly cool next month. So very, very cool opportunities are kind of popping because of that amazing platform. Yeah.
So, Bob, I don't want to speak for you, obviously, so I'll put it in the form of a question. Do you remember? I think it was the three of us talking on, I don't know if it was privately, or on a show, but he talked to us about this TikTok thing he was doing, and or maybe it was Stitch you did first, right?
I did Twitch.
Twitch.
All
right.
Yeah.
My vernacular is terrible with this stuff. Okay, right. And then that led to the TikTok thing.
Correct. Yeah. Somebody that watched me on Twitch actually was one of the people on TikTok, and he said, you should come over here and stream. And I was like, what, you mean the dancing video app? Of course I was like everybody else. And then he's like, no, just check it out. And then, the rest is kind of history, I guess you could say. Yeah.
Because what I remember about that conversation is it's such a moment in time of what the hell is he talking about? I mean, I trusted you. I didn't get it. Yeah. All right. Awesome, man. So Bob, what's going on, buddy? Long time no talk.
Yeah, same. And, all I've been doing really is just watching Freekbass's career and living vicariously through it. Seriously, it's such a pleasure to see you arrive at this place with this kind of notoriety, because ever since you first sent me a copy of All the Way This, All the Way That, your album with I assume that was with the Bump Assembly. Forgive me if I'm
combination. Yeah, there was a combination of Bump Assembly and solo. Yeah.
And I said, why is this guy not a major superstar? And suddenly here you are. You're a major superstar in a few short years. It's just incredible to observe, and it's nice also as contrast, because I think so many of us are still recovering from this, not to get too political with this, but I think a lot of us are recovering from this past election and the results of the election, both in terms of our emotional condition, our mental condition, and preparing for what's coming next. And so to see our good friend Freekbass get this kind of notoriety has been one of the many, one of the several, I'll put it that way, bright spots of 2024 that we can hang on to and say, yeah, you know what? It wasn't all bad. There were some good things in there. So round of applause to you, my friend. Congratulations on all of it, for sure.
And the nicest guy ever, by the way.
Oh, yes, really. Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Now, speaking of assholes.
I can't grow a beard. That can't grow a beard.
Oh, don't. No. And by the way, I was joking. I said, speaking of assholes, like Zaki's an asshole. Like,
it's true.
Tied with you to be the nicest guy in the world.
I appreciate it.
Professor Zaki, you and I were talking off mic, or we were all like a little upset that Bob is upstaging us with his facial hair badassery. To be fair, you and I have sported a beard for many years, my friend.
That's true.
I don't know if I've ever seen you without one. Have I?
No. Although in the time we've known each other long enough that it has gotten substantially grayer, right? It's a testament to how long we've known each other. You know,
when I arrived at this, I was like, "Oh my god, I have a Zaki Hasan. This is what, this is what this looks like." You know,
and Bob, you have no gray.
I do. It's all this. Yeah, that's all.
It's distinguished salt and
sugar. I see it. Yeah, that one little one. Whatever.
Reed Richards.
Yeah. Zaki, you're the coolest, man. What's going on with you lately? So your reviews are all over the place. Talk to us. What's going on?
Well, yeah. So I just wrapped up my semester. I submitted my grades Friday morning and got that out of the way. So now I have a couple weeks of relaxation. But yeah, writing for the San Francisco Chronicle, writing for IGN. Got some stuff at the Wrap in the mix. So it's amazing. Been very busy, but it's been gratifying. I got at the San Francisco Press Club. They gave me first and third place for review writing this last month. So it's kind of nice. You know, it's I say this, and I promise this is not false humility, but I'm burdened by this weight of imposter syndrome constantly every morning when I wake up, and occasionally to have a piece of paper validate me. It's like gives a little wind beneath my wings, you know.
When we first met, I want to say you were a critic for HuffPost back then.
I was writing for Huffington Post. That's right.
Yeah. And did Ariana Huffington still own it at that point? I don't remember.
I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I was just curious. Yeah. Well, awesome. And you're the one sporting a Superman shirt, which is why we're all here.
Well, the occasion called for it. So although I don't need an occasion, honestly, this is just kind of my uniform.
You know, because you are a Superman. So if you're tuning in, 10 minutes into the show, we're going to talk Superman, and we're going to talk about our favorite moments in live action. We all chose what we consider to be like just Superman movies, but obviously Freekbass, I know you wanted to throw a little CW in there and some stuff. Like, this is just an open conversation. I just thought it'd be fun to revisit some of our favorite moments as we are awaiting July. And the Superman trailer, James Gunn's Superman, dropped the other day. I shared my thoughts on a previous show. I'll recap them shortly in a moment. But Freak, let's go back to you. So what were your we haven't talked on this platform yet. What were your thoughts on the trailer? How do you feel about the film thus far?
Yeah, well, obviously Goosebumps and every thing I was a little nervous about. I mean, when I heard about the crypto thing, I mean, I'll be honest, I'm like, what? I mean, I'm all James Gunn, but really, you know what I mean? And but I should have known that a guy that made me cry about a talking raccoon will be able to pull it off, and as soon as that first 20 seconds of the trailer with him calling crypto, just again goosebumps, the humanity in the scene. I mean, Corn Sweat. I hope I'm pronouncing his last name correctly. Yeah, he is just, I mean, I think we're really, as I told you guys in a private text the other day, I think we're in for something very, very special, possibly with this guy playing the character, just from everything I've read about him and he went to Juilliard just like Reeve did, obviously, which is a cool little thing. And and again, as I mentioned, not to throw shade at anybody or at anything, but I love Henry Cavill, love Man of Steel very much, love BVS. I think I'd probably love it more than you do for sure, Rick. And as good as Henry is in the role, I still feel like his acting ability is still a bit limited, and where Corn Sweat feels like he may have a little bit more in the acting shot. Like, this is, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole too much, but like, I know we're going to talk about our favorite scenes, but my favorite scene from BVS is when Clark Kent and Bruce Wayne meet for the first time at that art party with Lex Luthor. And to me, as much as I love that scene, it's kind of like Affleck's, he just like towers over Cavill in terms of just being an actor. In my opinion, it just feels like the it's fun. I know that was part of the thing that they were trying to accomplish with that scene, but I just think you know, just having an actor of this magnitude in the role is going to be huge, and I'm just super excited. And obviously Nicholas Holt, my gosh, I mean, straight off the freaking comic book pages for Lex Luthor, he looks like he should
Hmm.
just stay bald, man. Dude looks like a badass with that bald head, man. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
he
yeah.
does, and listen, like I said at the top of the show, this is loosey goosey, so we can jump around here. I'll say this real fast on that note, and I would love Bob and Zaki's thoughts on this. I look at an actor playing Superman, playing multiple characters. You have to play Clark Kent that grew up
Right.
in Smallville. You have to play Kal-El in a sense. It's not necessarily the same thing as Superman because Superman's the public figure of Kal-El, in my view. And then you also have to play Clark Kent, the guy in disguise. That's the journalist. How many characters is that already? That's 5, right? 4,
Right. Right.
right?
Yeah.
Zaki, do you agree with that? Like in that assessment?
No, you're right.
Yeah, and Bob, I know you are into Snyder stuff, and I don't. We've talked about this a million times. I certainly don't hate Zack Snyder's work, and I borderline love Man of Steel myself. But to your point, Freak, I think he was a very, very cool Superman.
Oh,
Just
no doubt.
the other stuff, I think that we just mentioned, maybe not
Yeah.
as much. Okay, fair enough. All right, Bob. So what did you think of the trailer?
Oh, it hit me like a ton of bricks in all the best ways. In terms of the actual content of the trailer, I thought it was such a well done trailer. The amount of attention it's receiving is certainly deserved because, as far as just from a construction point of view, it hits all the things that you want to see in a teaser trailer. It's not giving away too much. There's enough of a tease there to get you intrigued in terms of what this is all about. But more than anything, the emotional impact, which has a lot to do with the trailer itself, but it also has to do with the context in which the trailer is dropping. And I feel, and once again, with the risk of getting a little tiny bit political here, I get the sense that there's a longing for this level of altruistic, kind heroism, which we don't see a whole lot of in our culture now, where oftentimes, the more toxic you are gets you the most attention rather than the more kind you are. That should be the thing that should get you the kind of attention that the internet is capable of. And it so often does not. We often see heroes. You know what? Now that I'm talking about it, one of the things that it reminded me of in terms of my reaction was during the darkest parts of the Great Recession, when the economy was collapsing and everything was melting down, people were losing their jobs. Mm-hmm. There was the Sully Sullenberg story where he crash landed that airplane in the Hudson River safely, rescuing obviously every last passenger on there. And I remember standing there in front of my TV watching that unfold and just tears streaming down my face. Yes, there are still good people who do good things and can be recognized for that. And so as I was watching this trailer, I got that sense just bleeding off of it, that feeling of hope and in a strange way, longing for this kind of a hero as we potentially move into a darker time in our national life. So I think for me, it was such an emotional experience. I watched it maybe half a dozen times and just, I'm not afraid to admit, I just sobbed like a baby after that first time through. It just, I don't know, it struck me as being so poignant.
Wow. Where do we go from here, Zaki? Well.
I think Bob said it all.
I know, right? Yeah. Can I say something real quick before you get started? Is I didn't like it that much at first. I was really scared. Like, oh my gosh, I don't like this. I don't like the way it looks. I don't like the way it feels. Zaki, you text me and you said watch it on your TV. Remember? Mm-hmm. I said, yeah, and I went 10-4, and I did, and it just sort of came to life. And I
made a big difference. It really did.
And I never looked back. I love it now. But anyway, thank you for that. Go ahead, sir.
Well, the reaction has been very gratifying to me. Like I've always felt like, as a Superman fan, I've always felt like I've had to justify being a Superman fan. And I realize I've got my Batman wall here. This is like, I feel like I'm cheating. But people love Batman more than Superman, it always felt like. And so for me, even when Man of Steel was coming out, there was excitement, but it was always tempered, you know. And there, kind of to Bob's point, there does seem to be a deep-seated desire for decency, and Superman is the embodiment of decency. And you know, I was literally just last week, my wife, she's like, why do you like Superman? We've been married 20 plus years. Suddenly she decided to ask me this question, you know, why do you like Superman? And I said, because his superpower is decency. He can do whatever he wants, but he chooses to help people. And what better example is in an age where the wealthiest man in the world is the biggest piece of shit in the world. He has the power to do everything, and he chooses to be the most selfish person.
Yeah.
Isn't it nice to be able to imagine all the things he could be king of the world. He chooses to live as an average person. He chooses to be weak with glasses. He chooses to help people with his journalism. He chooses to help people with his super strength. I don't know. Maybe that sounds naive, but you know, I've loved Superman all my life, and it's because of that.
Yeah.
You know, Ryan Airy from Screen Crush, to give him credit here, said something kind of similar, obviously with his personality different, but he said the reason he loves the character is because, you know, he moves to the big city to try to, you know, he comes from this small town, these small town values, then moves to the big city to try to make the world a better place, not just as Superman, but through his journalism. And I'm hearing that a little more from people's opinions I respect, and I've just never really put that. I don't know. I've never thought about what Clark as the journalist is doing, and that's a pretty cool thing to get my head wrapped around.
Yeah.
Well said, man.
Mm.
Well, yeah. And Freak, to go back to you, I'm a big animal lover. In fact, my cat almost interrupted our show, and I've got 2 dogs that are chilling in the kennel right now because they have to, otherwise they'd wreak havoc right now. But I wasn't sure how I felt about Crypto in live action myself. And, you know, the jury's still out. We don't know if it will work,
Right.
but it certainly looks like it's going to work. It looks so like when he whistles for him, home, take me home. Oh, dude.
Yeah.
It just killed me. He's wearing a cape. Jesus.
You know what
Hey.
was so wild too is like that scene that was so powerful. I mean, we've seen, you know, Superman beat up on film before, and but the wheezing, that was like, you know, and I don't know if anybody's had I had a crazy accident many years ago, and with a lung related thing, and I mean that's exactly how it's, you know, you're wheezing like that, you know, if you obviously, and it was like, it's like almost painful, you know, and seeing that was like, that's one of the first sounds you hear out of that trailer was the wheezing, which is just from Superman, which is crazy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And Bob, I'm going to pose this to you. I was thinking about that interesting choice for him to open with that scene, because in a way, what James Gunn, in my view, is telling us is that, and I always say we're not going to overanalyze trailers. And of course, we all overanalyze trailers. But I digress. But is that it's almost like he's telling us, hey, this is a uplifting Superman to you and Zaki's both points, and speaking of hope. But this film's going to have a dark tone to it a little bit too. There's an underbelly of cynicism and maybe even a little despair. And I think obviously him helping people and himself overcome that is in essence the character as well. But I found that an interesting choice. That it opened with him bleeding.
Yeah.
And, you know, do you bleed? Yeah, this one bleeds.
Right. I think it was a great reminder that this Superman that we're going to get is going to be a vulnerable Superman.
Yeah.
A Superman who's not immensely overpowered, as we've seen in the past. I mean, even Christopher Reeve's Superman was able to fly so fast that he reversed the rotation of the Earth. And I don't think
not my favorite scene in the first one, by the way. Go ahead.
No,
go ahead.
And I don't think we're going to see that kind of overpowered Superman, at least if this trailer is any indication. And just in the interest of full disclosure, I'm an enormous James Gunn fan. I've been looking forward to his reboot, this DCU iteration of the DC characters since it was announced. In fact, we talked about this before. On this show, I said, wouldn't it be great if James Gunn took over the DC universe and was actually able to be the Kevin Feige of the and there it actually happened. And so I'm a gigantic fan of the Peacemaker series and the Suicide Squad, and of course the Guardians films, especially we talked about this on the show too, Guardians 3, was just so wonderful and so filled with heart. And if you're an animal lover, it hit you in all the emotional spots. And so I think we're going to get that typical James Gunn balance between a little bit of snark in there, but also just a metric ton of heart. And that's what he always brings to his films, no matter how violent they might be. There's always that warm center. And when you have a character like Superman and you combine that with what James Gunn, what his instincts are, what his talent brings to all of these stories, it's going to be a great combination. I'm feeling immensely confident in the success of this. And if the success of the trailer is any indication, I think people are going to be lined up for this. I just think there's an appetite for it. And I think we're going to see a different take. James Gunn's also talked about how he didn't quite know how to approach Superman, and he finally figured it out. He finally figured out a way into this character, and I'm really excited to see what that is. And I think we had a taste of that in the trailer.
I couldn't agree more. I've never done a swifter 180 in my life. I didn't like it at first. I was on a text bed with some buddies, and I was not feeling it, and I just wasn't, and I was very disappointed because I wanted to love it, and then I ended up loving it more than I wanted to love it. It was a really wild ride. So, Zaki, to shift gears just a hair here, where does the original Superman film? It's obviously all tied in together, but where does the original Superman film rank for you in your comic book film? Top 5, top 10 list, whatever you want to call it.
Well, I think it's one of the greatest superhero movies ever made. I don't think we would have the MCU. I don't think we wouldn't have anything right now if it wasn't for what Richard Donner did with that movie. As far as where it ranks, honestly it's hard for me to say because it has such an outsized role in my perception of the character, my perception of superhero films in terms of how you approach it in order to do it right. And I think Richard Donner, when you think about it, I mean, gosh, Richard Donner, Kevin Feige was his assistant, right? So the MCU is the fruit of how Richard Donner approached taking a fantastical character and playing it straight down the middle, and I think we're still reaping the benefits of that. I think that I'm fairly certain that James Gunn's film will be very heavily tonally indebted to what Richard Donner did. And I'm sure he'll be pulling inspiration from a variety of places. But people say, "Oh, it's just nostalgia bait," and you're looking backward. And it's like, no, I think they nailed it. They nailed it the first time, and so this is a character who allows for reinterpretation. But the fact that the 78 movie did so much right means that you have to acknowledge, you have to take that in to whatever your interpretation is going to be. And I think I like Man of Steel, but some of the negative reaction to that film was, I think, an acknowledgement that, he may have moved too far. The window shifted a little too much in terms of how to approach that character in the eyes of the public.
Yeah, and if it wasn't for Superman Returns' existence, really, or trying to be in a continuation of the refilms, and that fell flat in a different way.
And it felt, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but it felt flat because Bryan Singer got some of the very little bit of the window dressing, but he didn't capture the tone. He didn't capture the essence. He made something very dour and dire, and that was not the movie that Richard Donner had made. So it was it was paying homage in a very superficial way, but the studio was like, well, we tried to continue that old version and it didn't work. And it's like, well, you really didn't,
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But just like we aforementioned Batman, these are all stepping stones, because without the backlash of Batman Returns, no Joel Schumacher. Without no Joel Schumacher, no Nolan.
Yeah, that's right.
Which is probably means no Matt Reeves. Which, one thing I'll say about James Gunn that I also love is that he's going to do this universe, I think, a lot of justice. But he's also going to leave Matt Reeves the hell alone. Hopefully, which is very, very important to me. I think he will, especially after the Penguin. I mean, he has to. So in Superman, Zaki, let's kind of jump right in here. What is your favorite Superman moment, or really any scene for that matter, in that film?
in the 78 movie.
in the original film. Yes, sir. We'll just go
And-
chronological order.
Yeah, well, I mean, gosh, if you got, I can think of two right off the top of my head. Number one is right after Clark has raced home as a high schooler to beat his friends or the bullies from school, and Jonathan Kent is like, gives him his lesson, right? You are here for a reason. I don't know whose reason, whatever reason, but it's not to catch footballs, that I think Glenn Ford in that scene is amazing. I think Christopher Reeve's delivery in that scene, even though it's Jeff East is playing him, but it's Christopher Reeve's voiceover is so terrific. And then of course it culminates in Jonathan's death. It's a terrific moment. And then after the scene where Superman has gone flying with Lois, and then he shows up again as Clark, and he does the thing where he kind of takes it just stands up.
Mine. Yeah.
Did I steal yours? Sorry.
Yeah.
And,
well, I mean, it's an easy one to pick because it's
right?
one of the greatest scenes, one of the greatest bits of acting in any of these movies.
What's so great is you watch that movie, you're like, come on, how could he possibly make people believe that Clark and Superman and then oh, okay.
That's
how.
I mean, it's incredible. And who is he? And in that moment too, I feel like when he's talking to Lois, he is Kal-El Superman and Smallville Clark all at once. Like he's the most himself in a way ever, and then he breaks. Yeah, he knows that he can't. That's so good.
Yeah,
Freekbass. Go ahead. Oh yeah, go ahead.
One last thing I just want to mention.
Yeah.
I think Christopher Reeve's acting in the scene where he believes Lois is dead is amazing.
Oh, that was my other one.
I'm sorry.
No.
Now I don't have anything to say. Those are my two.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That film is hard. A lot of these films are hard because there's so many great scenes. For me, I just said, okay, just focus on Superman in costume because that'll help at least because there's so many Clark moments. And one thing I love about the first film too is that it's like 3 or 4 different movies stylistically. It's this sci-fi thing at the beginning. It's this small town kind of, family drama in a sense, like a Little House on the Prairie-esque. And then it's like this big city hustle, funny, it's a brilliantly done movie and it's aged so well. Anyway, Freekbass, what about you, buddy? What's your some of your favorite scenes?
Yeah, well, we're gonna definitely have a lot of crossover here, and but the interview scene when Lois is interviewing Superman, obviously which kind of leads into the scene that Zaki was just talking about a few minutes later. Just that whole scene where he humanizes Superman in such just an amazing way, where you're like, this guy's just like a regular dude with like superpowers. It was just brilliant, just incredible Christopher Reeve. I think I think of the scene with him doing the Clark thing and changing his shoulders and all that kind of stuff too. But when I think of Superman, I think of him sitting there at that table with Lois, with them, her giving the interview to them as well. And then the other, really quickly, I'll mention the scene that I remember the first time seeing the movie. It was almost kind of like the first time I saw the first X-Men movie, because the first X-Men movie was coming off of, I think it was the first superhero movie after the Joel Schumacher stuff we were just talking about, the Batman stuff, because it came out, and, it wasn't Batman, obviously, but it was still the first superhero movie. And I was like, X-Men, what's this going to be? And I remember going to the theater the first time, and the scene with Magneto as a child at Auschwitz, pulling the gates in the first 5-10 minutes of the movie, and you're like, whoa, this is not what I was expecting it was going to be. That's kind of how I feel the first scene when you see with Marlon Brando. I know Marlon Brando gets a hard time for being kind of non-committal to the role. We've all seen those interviews with Christopher Reeve and all the talk about that. But he's still freaking Marlon Brando, and he can, act it, fall out of bed and be one of the most amazing actors in the world. And that whole scene with the Zod scene at the first scene in the movie we see after the amazing credit scene, it's just like,
the trial.
The trial, yeah,
amazing.
yeah. Oh, yeah, and just Brando's delivery and the soundtrack, that Krypton music that from the John Williams soundtrack, which I know it's not the most famous theme in the movie, but it's just an amazing, powerful theme that they kind of allude to throughout the movie too as well. That scene still is one of my favorite scenes, and with those little things too as well. The whole Krypton sequence is just I can just watch that whole Krypton without even getting to Superman and love that whole sequence.
I used to
Yeah.
have a viewfinder, and it had all the Krypton scenes in it, and I
Oh,
would
yeah.
pull it,
yeah.
right? And I love the one where they have the rings. It was so kind of 3D, you know. I was
Yeah,
8
yeah.
years old, so Bob, to Freak talking about the humanity. There's a great little subtle moment in that scene that I love when she asked him, "Do you eat?" He's like, "Yeah, when I'm hungry."
Oh, it's great.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a little moment, but anyway, what about you?
Well, there's obviously Zaki mentioned my two from my list, but
Sorry.
they're also the two greatest scenes. But there's a detail about that scene where Clark comes into Lois's house from a filmmaking point of view that's kind of fascinating, because we see Superman fly away off the balcony, and then the camera rotates around and in comes Clark in through the front door.
Yeah.
And how do they do that? How do they get Christopher Reeve changed into Clark so quickly? And it turns out that the shot of Superman flying away is a projection.
Yeah.
And so they're able to have Christopher Reeve coming in through Lois's front door. So it's a little, in addition to the acting, the performance that we see there, which is one of the greatest, as we said, one of the greatest performances of any actor in any of these movies. We also have a little bit of, 1978, 1977, 78 technical wizardry going on there to make it seem seamless that, this guy could ostensibly fly away, change super quickly, and then walk in the door, when in real life that could never happen. But there's so many great scenes in that movie. It's hard to narrow it down to any single one, but you do get the sense going in, disbelieving whether or not Superman's glasses or Clark's glasses are enough to disguise him. But there's so much more than that to Clark Kent's disguise. It's his posture, where he's hunched over and he's down and his voice is higher and he stumbles over his words and is very, very awkward. And we see all of that playing out. And then, but the transformation from that into Kal-El and then back to Clark really emphasizes that, it's more of a disguise than we kind of made it out to be, or that we kind of thought it would be. And so maybe it allows us to suspend our disbelief a little bit more to see the transformation. And so as kind of the lead-off section of Lois's relationship with Clark, it allows us to not disbelieve, to get into the mind of Lois Lane and understand, even though she's a journalist, how could she be so easily tricked by this guy with an obvious disguise? Well, here's how. It's through the performance. And, obviously we're talking about Christopher Reeve's performance, but in the fiction of the movie, it's Clark's or Kal-El's performance that is able to pull off that disguise. It's not the glasses. It's so much more than the glasses. And that's what makes it so good.
Absolutely. So well said. All this stuff I love, and I don't even know what mine is. I don't even know what mine was now. I've just been thinking about, for me, I think the thing that jumped out for me is it's a scene that I always love, and it's so classic. Obviously, when he looks up and down at the phone booth, and it's when he introduces the world to Superman. Yeah. And of course, he comes out and goes, "Hey, that's a bad outfit." He's like, "Excuse me," and he's all very. You notice he has to stop and be very polite to the gentleman and have manners, right?
Yeah,
which is great. Then he saves Lois, and of course, that whole sequence and Margot Kidder, bravo performance. And when, the great line, "Don't worry, I've got you. You've got me. Who's got you?" All that stuff is fantastic. But I love when they land and she says, "Who are you?" And he says, "A friend." And that's such a sweet moment. And it embodies Chris Reeve's Superman, really the character itself, the actual character. But I will go back real fast to the first time we see him as Superman, or at least Kal-El as that transition. And it's this beautiful narration by Marlon Brando. And he's talking to his son, who's a teenager, and taking him through time. And when we return to Earth, this many years will have passed or whatever, and they come back and, the mask forms and you see through the eye of the mask and it spins around. And then there he is. and you see him, and you hear the score roar. And what I love about that scene is we see him fly for the first time, right? And he just flies right into the camera. He's obviously wired if you look at it now, but it's his athleticism. I always have a hard time with that word. Is not to be understated. I mean, my goodness, he was on wires in 1976 filming this thing that's never been done before, and he flew. And to me, that scene is truly like that tagline. And Zaki or Bob, anybody, forgive me if I butcher it, but I think when they were selling the film, it was like you'll believe.
You believe a man can fly.
You'll believe a man can fly. Thank you.
Right.
And in that moment, I believed. I still believe. So
Did you guys? I don't know who of all four of you who have seen the Christopher Reeve documentary. That just came out, which is
I haven't yet. It's amazing. I bet
it's amazing. But the one thing that they said was that scene you're talking about, Rick, that was Christopher Reeve, actor's artistic choice. They knew, of course, he was going to fly towards the camera. That was already worked out. But that little thing he does, that was a Christopher Reeve thing he took on his own, and they were like, "This guy's it's Superman." Like the whole crew, I guess, was just like, "What?" Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I've talked about this. You guys know this, but when I was Superman at Six Flags, they had these wires attached to me, and I had to fly, and I had to sell it to an audience every day. And I'm, in my early 20s in the best shape I'd ever been in, but it was hard, man, to balance yourself on those wires. And ZFX did and they had done the first Mission Impossible with Tom Cruise. And then they went around and did these stunt shows after that. And I was like, some guy that was there was like, he was just on set with Tom Cruise like 6 months before he was on set with me. I'm like, what is going on here? And I can tell you it was hard. And just doing that for a couple of summers, I look back on it and then I see what Chris Reeve did in those films. It hits me a little bit harder because I don't know how the hell he did it, just because it's very, very challenging to balance yourself and then to look good while you're doing it. All right, Zaki. So going to the second film, I didn't set any boundaries here, right? Because there are, in a sense, two films. There's Superman 2, the theatrical cut, which is directed by Richard Donner and Richard Lester, right? What is it ultimately, like 70-30? Something like that.
The final version, yeah.
Yeah, and you can tell when you see the Donner cut, the stuff that's Richard Lester, clearly him, a little slapstick and everything. So I just feel like obviously it's just an open forum. So if you include something from either cut, is fair game. So how do you do this? How do you approach Superman 2? Do you think theatrical or do you think director's cut?
Well, personally, I think that the film is the theatrical cut. The Donner cut is an interesting DVD extra. It's not a complete movie.
Same
for it. I think that Donner had this mandate for himself, and Michael Thaw put it together to use as little of Richard Lester's movie as possible, understandably. But I'm like, as a result of that, it's not. You can't just swap it in and say that's the new Superman 2. It's an interesting window into what Richard Donner would have done, and I wish he'd had the chance to finish it. But it is what it is.
I do like Niagara Falls better than her jumping out of a building. Me personally, I think her jumping out of a building is really talking about Lois Lane. When she jumped and not Niagara Falls. Is that where they're at? Yeah, that's right. Yeah. She jumps into the water and he gets the log. And in the Donner cut, she jumps out of a building. Bobby, I've seen that. It's kind of dark. It's a little twisted.
Wasn't there like a deleted scene where she actually shot him too, or tried to shoot at him?
Yeah.
They put that in the Donner cut, but they never shot it, so it's just the screen tests.
Oh, right. Yeah. There you go. Anyway, okay. So what's your favorite scene or scenes from Superman 2?
Oh, I think one of the greatest lines of Superman of all time is, "General, would you care to step outside?"
Yes.
That's not in the Donner edit, by the way. In the Donner edit, it's, "General, don't you believe in freedom of press?" And I'm like, no, he doesn't. He's a dictator from another world. Of course he doesn't. So, General, would you care to step outside? That's one of the all-time great Superman moments.
I know, my favorite thing about that line is the build up to it, because he gets his powers back. You see the newspapers fly around, the guy's looking around, and he returns.
Well, and what I love is right after Lex is like, "Oh, Superman, thank God." I mean,
yeah,
that's funny.
Yeah. Gosh, that's great. It pumps me up. It has this almost rocky, it's go for it kind of moment.
Yeah.
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 Okay, give me one more because that one's one of mine too. Give me another great Superman.
I think that the entire battle in Metropolis is very well done. But what I love is it seems like the Kryptonian criminals have killed Superman, and you have all the people of Metropolis rise up, and they're like, Superman's dead, let's get him, right? So it's like he's empowered everybody. Superman has, but obviously the Kryptonian criminals are they start blowing this wind, and it's just pandemonium. Superman gets out of the wreckage of this bus. He looks around. He's like, I have to take the battle away from here, and it's the hardest thing he's ever done. But he leaves.
Yeah.
And that's just, and you see the angst on Superman's face. And there's a great shot. It's in the Donner edit. It's not in the Lester cut, where when it's a close up where you see the wreckage part, and you just see it's the Superman symbol of him kind of doing this. And for some reason, that's not in the Lester cut, but it's a terrific sequence. It symbolizes his character perfectly.
I love that movie so much. I saw it in the theaters multiple times. We didn't have cable at my house, but my grandparents lived 3 blocks over from us, and they had, I guess it was HBO or Showtime, whichever one it was. And I guess it showed in the TV guide because my grandfather called me, "Oh, Ricky Joe, Superman's going to come on tomorrow." I'm like, "I'm coming over," It was just, I probably watched it at their house 1,000 times. It's still so good. Freak, what are your favorite scenes or scene from Superman 2?
Well, I mean, again, there's Zaki kind of said some of them, but the one scene that was almost became like I'll say the most impactful scene to me, that's almost became a life lesson for me, was the diner scene. When he first shows up, no superpowers anymore, and I'm not talking about the post-credit diner scene, which is also great, but yeah, and obviously it's the first time he's experiencing pain, and then the line, the life lesson line, like if you guys, anybody that's an artist here knows, like, when you're meeting different people in your life, whether they be personal relationships or friends or whatever, someone like might be intrigued with what you do. Me being a musician, sometimes might be intrigued with, like, say if I've gone out with someone and they're like, "Oh, I love what you do on stage and this is awesome." But then when they, sometimes when you go out, they want you to start being a different person then, and I always call that the Superman theory. And then hence that scene when Lois says to him, "I wish the guy, where's the guy I fell in love," after he gets the crap beat out of him. Lois says something to the lines of, "I wish the man was here that I fell in love with," or whatever. And Christopher Reeve, all battered, he's like, "I wish he was here too," when they find out obviously that Zod's on the planet. Which, first off, F you to Lois Lane. It's like, I just gave up everything for you, and now you want the other guy back? But it's kind of, that's why I said that's my little life lesson thing, where it's like, I call it the Superman theory. It's like, the person you fell in love with was the Superman person. It's not the person that you want them to be. And it's a lot to do with that dining room scene right there too, as well.
That's a really good scene. And
Oh,
shows how vulnerable he is, and he gets his ass kicked too.
Oh yeah,
He does.
Yeah.
Wow. All right, Bob.
Yeah, well, that was mine. The diner scene where he gets his ass kicked, and then obviously the coda to that, the polar opposite of that, he goes back to the diner. And I kind of like that. Yeah, that's right. That move, that little move is just incredible.
Out.
Yeah.
Yep. And it's an interesting move for Clark / Superman to make, to go back to the diner just to get a little bit of comeuppance, just to teach a little lesson to these guys. And it's not necessarily something that is entirely in character. Like, it doesn't seem like he'd be a guy who'd be vindictive like that. Like, all right, now try to F with me now, guys. Come on. But I like that. I like that little bit of, for lack of a better term, vengeance from Superman.
I always say that's the scene where he goes back to the diner and reveals to them that he is in fact Superman. So complete gives up his secret identity.
Yeah,
exactly. So I think it's a combination of both of those scenes that I always respond to. I always love those. The vulnerability of him in that first diner scene, though, when I first saw Superman 2 in the theater, being just a little kid, I think I was 9 years old, it was hard to watch. I remember being upset by that. Like, first of all, how could you possibly give up your powers? And wow, you must really love Lois Lane to do that. And then to be in this bar and just get devastated like that. It was hard for, a little kid who loved Superman to see Superman getting beaten up so badly. And maybe there was a little bit of that. Maybe there was an echo of that in watching the James Gunn Superman trailer, to see Superman so beat up, and that level of vulnerability for someone that you kind of look to in an aspirational way was, I think there's some echoes of that emotional reaction that I had when I first saw Superman 2. So yeah, I'm going to have to go with the unoriginal answer of the two diner scenes.
I'm going to fast forward to Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2, watching that in the theater. And one of the things I loved about that movie were the parallels to Superman 2, and whether they were intentional or not or whatever, but just him giving up his power, losing his power, whatever it is. And like the scene and are they like on an L train or the subway or whatever? No, what are they on? It's when Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man stops everything and then they pick him up and they protect him. It kind of reminds me of that moment, and Zaki, you're talking about in Superman 2, where they beat up Superman. Let's get him. Like they rally behind their hero. There's some beautiful stuff there. Yeah, there's some parallel there. And just, at least for me, there's nothing really that you guys haven't said. I always love the scene where he saves a little boy in Niagara Falls. It's absurd because that's the slowest fall in the history of falls. But I still love it. It's just so quintessential. I love how she sends him off to get her a hot dog. He doesn't sneak off. She makes him go get her freshly squeezed orange juice in the OJ or in the hot dog. And then I just love when he catches the boy and the score soars and he goes, ow, like he's acting all vulnerable with the boy because he catches him. It's just a very sweet moment. It's just a subtle moment, but it's so great. So Chris Reeve. And then he lands and says, only one ride per customer. It's the little boy wants to go again.
And those
quickly about that. Go ahead, Zach.
Those parents should absolutely have that kid taken away. They are terrible, terrible parents.
Yeah.
There's terrible parents in that whole franchise. The little girl, the cat in the tree, the mom like slaps her.
Yeah.
Because she said she saw a man. How dare you? It's like such a moment in time. They wouldn't pull that off in 2024. But anyway, all right. So let's.
Sorry, Freak. I think you were saying something.
Yeah,
go ahead.
No, I was just going to quickly say, going back to Christopher Reeve in the scene we're talking about when Lois tries to out Superman or Clark being Superman, and even when he's chasing her around, with zapping the log to save her in the water and everything, it's wild how no one's around him, right? But he's still acting like Clark. He's like, oh my gosh, like all like fumbled and stuff, and it's like he stays in that. It's like there's like a mental thing where he feels like he has to stay in that character, even that no one even would know if he was or not, while he's doing that little feat, which I thought was very interesting.
Yeah, maybe he does. Hey, just for purposes of time, because I booked you guys for an hour. This might go like 10 minutes over. Is everybody good on time?
Yeah, that's fine.
Perfect. Yeah. Just wanted to do a little check there. All right, so we're going to talk about a very underrated film that Zaki and I love called Superman 3. and I will speak for both of us only because we've talked about this a million times over the years. We both recognize the movie is complete garbage. Neither one of us care. We still love it. So Zaki, I try to avoid having a million Richard Pryor scenes that are all trash, but I don't care because he's my second favorite comedian ever, and he's in a Superman movie. I mean, but what is your favorite scene in Superman 3, sir?
So first of all, Superman 3 is the first movie I saw in the theater. So very nice. Very
first movie of all movies.
Yeah, I had seen the other two, but this was the first time I saw a movie in the theater, and I remember how exciting that was. So number one, the computer lady. It is a generational trauma, which I didn't realize.
Vera turning into a cyborg.
When she, because for me that, I'm pretty sure I crapped my pants when I saw that. And it's been gratifying that if I type in Superman 3 scary, you'll just get reams of Reddit pages. People are like, oh, that, I still have nightmares about that. So that's weirdly comforting. But no, the Clark Kent versus Superman scene is, come on. That is a great Superman scene, full stop, in any movie. It happens to be in a not great movie, but we never got anything like that in any of the other movies. It's a great showcase for how Christopher Reeve really plugged into what made Clark unique. You can tell he had a blast playing the evil Superman. It's effectively staged. It's well done. The music by Ken Thorne using the John Williams themes is very well done. It's just a good sequence in a not great movie.
I agree, and I'm going to cheat. I'm so sorry to do this to my friends and guests here, but I'm going to say that's my favorite too. And I saw it in the theater, and I saw the double feature with Return of the Jedi with my sister. I don't remember why. I guess they obviously overlapped. Like, I can't. It might have been in a dollar theater. I don't even remember. What I can tell you is we saw them on the same day, and when good Superman Clark chokes bad Superman, and he opens up his shirt, and the vibrant colors are on the S, and the score, dun, dun, and he flies off. My theater cheered, and that was the first time I ever experienced anything like that. So that's my favorite scene. Okay, where do we? Who was next? Freekbass, Superman 3.
I mean, we're gonna have to, not to jump on the bandwagon, but like, what else? What other scene can you really choose?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
how about when he flipped and he's breaking the bottles with the peanuts? No?
yeah, but that's. I mean, it's not the same sequences, but it's kind of leading into that sequence, obviously. Yeah. But yeah, all that the evil Superman versus Clark is just incredible. But my gosh, I texted you this earlier, and I know we don't mean to drive a point home, but man, that first 10 minutes of that movie, though, are freaking painful to watch.
Great.
Well,
the slapstick with the paint bucket and the blind guy with the line thing, and it's like, what am I watching? And you're putting the credits. The first two movies, it's this sci-fi, like outer space, and it's like, what? Like, what are we doing here, people?
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like, so very, very, very nervous about that, and but yeah, I mean, that is the scene. I mean, I can't. I'm just going to piggyback on what both you guys said on that. Yeah.
So Zaki, we were texting about it, and I text Freak. I said something like, well, Superman 2 worked. Now can I do my own movie, Richard Lester? Because it is unapologetically him, right?
Yeah.
All right, Bob. Bob, I feel bad because somebody had to go last, and you and the rotation didn't even start off that way. I fucked it up somewhere, and I'm so sorry because I'm sorry.
That's okay, because my answer is the same as always.
Bob
as
gets
Zaki's.
to go first. Bob gets to go first. That's that.
The thing with Superman 3 is it's such a disappointment in terms of just the tone. It's like they just forgot what the previous two Superman movies were all about, and they made some sort of zany thing that just doesn't match. It's obviously Christopher Reeve is there and lends that level of gravity to the character, but everything else is missing from it. And so we latch on to the two scenes that make us feel something, and that's Superman fighting Superman and that woman getting just horrendously transformed into a cyborg. And I think what makes that so terrifying is her reactions, because she is screaming bloody effing murder. I mean, it is
silent.
Yeah. Yeah, and so it's like watching just a straight up torture scene in the middle of this light comedy superhero movie. Suddenly, it's this body horror nightmare that's out of a Hostel film or something. You know what I mean? It's like this one of the Saw movies or something, where they're. What is this? And is this for kids, or what is supposed to be happening here? But then again, a lot of the 80s movies that were designed for kids are terrifying. See also Return to Oz. And so, it's those two scenes, obviously, for me in Superman 3, and for all the same reasons.
Real quick with you guys, Rick, I want to ask you, just because you're probably closest to the actual end. Well, I guess everybody is here in a little bit, but what do you think was going on in the pitch room? I mean, how? Was it just because Richard Pryor was such a, the toy, he was the big star at the time, and we'll combine these two, and what?
And computers.
Oh, and computers, right.
Ooh, computers. I think it was a combination of Richard Lester's success with Superman 2. They gave him, that's unapologetically a Richard Lester film. I mean, it is,
Yeah.
And I think Richard Pryor's fame, and I think the computers, I guess.
Yeah.
I still love it. It's garbage, but I can't help it. I saw it in the theater, and everybody cheered in that scene, and I loved it. And I even, I can't ski. It's absurd, but it's just, I love it. I love all the stuff also with Clark and Lana Lane, by the way. I think it's very well done.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
forgot that. That's some good stuff. Yeah.
The Smallville stuff when he goes to his reunion. It's great shit.
Yeah.
So Bob, I'm going to just continue with you on this because
Okay.
it makes sense anyway. So transition to Superman 4.
Hmm.
Did they get that right? From Superman 3?
They tried, I think, to capture something of the first two movies in Superman 4. I have to admit, I've only seen it once because I think that's all you need to see of Superman 4. But the thing that I always respond to, just in rewatching clips and things like that, is obviously Superman's speech to the UN and the hopefulness of that and the fantasy of it, that you wish something like this could really happen, where there's this super being and he decides no more nuclear weapons, all gone now, and collects them all and disposes them in space, and that's the end of that. Boy, wouldn't that be great if that could really, really happen? And then just the recap of all of that, the mission statement before the United Nations, and the round of applause that he gets as he walks out, and you honest to God believe that could have happened. There's nothing unusual about this garish costumed superhero walking his way through the UN General Assembly. It's a wonderful little moment.
Zaki, that's yours too, isn't it?
Superman's speech at the end of the film, at the end when he says, "I was wrong. I thought I could lead you to peace, but that's not my decision to make."
Mm-hmm.
And he says, "There will be peace when the people of the world want it so badly that their leaders have no choice but to give it to them."
It's a great line.
I only wish you could see the world the way I do, because when you look at it, it's just one world.
Yeah.
Say that last line one more time, please.
When you really look at it, it's just one world.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I think what helps is by then Christopher Reeve was so familiar in that role that he gives that movie a credibility that it doesn't really earn, because the special effects are so lousy, and the music score is so tinny, and there's all these, Gene Hackman's wearing a toupee that's balding as Lex Luthor. You know what I mean? Like, none of the movie works, but for Christopher Reeve trying desperately to hold it together. It's not a good movie, but that final, I mean, it's sort of like the final statement of Christopher Reeve's Superman. That's what makes it worthwhile for me.
Jesus, that's a powerful way to phrase that.
Did I merge another movie into Superman 4 and say that did he collect all the nuclear weapons and throw them into space?
Yeah, he does.
Okay.
Yeah,
all right, good.
He does. That's like the middle of the movie. Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Okay. Gotcha.
All right, Freak. What you
Same. I'm with the United Nations speech, because I remember, like, in my head thinking, I watched it not too terribly long ago, within the last year or so, and I remember, like, watching it and thinking, like, oh, okay, get ready, this is going to be awful. And for about the first 30 to 40 minutes of the movie, I'm like, well, this is pretty darn good. This is not too bad, up until when Nuclear Man gets introduced, basically, and then it's from there. But yeah, so I mean, there's definitely some. I actually like 4 better than 3. If you had to sit down and watch, I know, sorry, but if I had a choice of the two, I would probably watch 4 before 3. Yeah, it's definitely the United Nations speech. I mean, that was classic Chris Reeve too, as well too. But the only thing I would say, and this is maybe a trite thing, and I don't mean to, but I feel, what did that come out, like 87-ish?
87 or 88.
Yeah, so it felt a little bit like he was right on the verge of aging out of the role a little bit, watching it too, though, when you see it, he was so, like, in those first 2 movies, especially, even in 3 a little bit, but definitely on 1 and 2, he's so virile and cut and pumped, and, like, just looks like, like perfect, and it's like, he still looks great, compared to 90% of the general public, but just compared to the other movies, like, you know what I mean? I hope I'm not trying to shade at Christopher Reeve at all. It's just
his suit was oddly colored. His hair was weird.
Yeah, it wasn't black. It was like this weird brownish color.
Yeah, everything was really weird. The only thing I'll add to what I liked in that movie, I liked hearing him speak Russian to the Russian astronaut. He says at the top, it made him worldly. and I thought that was a cool choice, an interesting choice, because to my knowledge, we've never had that on film. Bob, Superman 5.
Superman 5, Superman Returns.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got to go with the scene on the boat where Jason discovers his powers and shoves that piano. I think as far as that movie goes, lots of flaws, obviously, to pick apart. But if you rewatch that scene where Lois is trying to send that fax to get help, and that guy is playing heart and soul with Jason, who's actually Superman's son, the editing and tension build in that sequence is exquisite. It's so well done and leads up to that aha moment when he reveals his powers as Superman's son and is able to dispose of that flunky who's kind of being an a-hole there. And so that I think is the best scene in that movie, and a great scene overall in all of the Superman movies. I think it's definitely, and again, from a filmmaking point of view, it's an outstandingly constructed scene.
My buddy Tim Vale is actually friends with the parents of that young actor. And I remember when that movie came out, and he was, they were talking about him doing a second, maybe even third film. Obviously, it didn't happen. But anyway, Zaki, what do you think? Superman Returns.
I got to go with the airplane rescue sequence. The first time when Superman returns. In fact, I don't think the movie ever beats that in terms of like a effective effect sequence that's emotionally arousing, that really does something with the character that takes advantage of his particular power set. Great. John Ottman did the score, but he nicely brings in the John Williams music there. Brandon Routh is terrific in there. The effects, it just really works, that entire sequence. The only thing that bugs me is that after he rescues the plane, he lands it down in a baseball diamond and he flies away. And I'm like, bro, just take it with you. How was I supposed to get that out of there?
He comes back for it. Come on.
After the camera. Yeah. But yeah, that's my favorite part of that movie.
Yeah, that's a great scene. I saw that in 3D.
Oh, nice.
When the day it was released, yeah. Freak, do you remember that movie well?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I saw it. I mean, I was super, like I mentioned earlier, I was a huge X-Men fan at that point. I loved everything Bryan Singer had done at that point. Obviously, that's before all the craziness came out about him, too, a couple years later. But I agree with Zaki, too, as well. It's the airplane scene, too. That's just like, that felt the most Superman of the movie to me. The rest of the movie, to be honest, I wasn't that crazy. It was too... Like you had mentioned earlier in the podcast, Zaki, the whole thing was just a little bit too down and dour, the whole thing besides that. And the deadbeat dad thing was weird too for Superman. That had a weird vibe. Didn't sit real well with me either. But yeah, that scene is great. Yeah.
It is a great scene. There's a scene, I'm kind of surprised that none of you guys chose this one. I don't, and maybe I'm just alone on the scene. I feel like it's one of the greatest Superman scenes on film, and it's okay. Not the scene like where he's being creepers and he's spying on them, all because it leads to that. Because that scene's a little iffy. But when he flies off, and I love the sky. It's like overcast, and the score, and you hear Marlon Brando's Jor-El talking to him, and then he gets up in space, and he's just like having a moment. And he's away from Earth, and he just hears his father speaking to him, and it's like just to remind him of his purpose, and that's why I sent them you, my only son. And then all of a sudden, he starts to hear the chaos, and in the moment realizes why the hell he's there, and it's not because of a love interest or whatever, and he's got to get to work. His eyes open up, poof, flies. It's a fucking perfect Superman scene, in my opinion. I love it. The movie itself is just okay outside of that, but. I have these conversations with friends who Superman friends, and no one ever chooses that scene. I need to go back. I watched it this morning too. I need to go back and watch it again. Going, am I missing something in the scene? Do you guys remember that? Is anybody here like, oh yeah, that scene's cool, or am I just crazy? Do you know what I'm talking about? He's up in space, right? And he's just floating there, and he's looking down.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Watch that scene. I'd love to get you guys' thoughts on that. I just think, in a weird way, like that's almost my airplane scene. It's like this one great Superman moment because the airplane scene to me is cool, but it's I don't know. It's just, I think if he didn't say the same line he does in the first film, I would like it better. It's still the safest way to travel, statistically speaking. But but anyway, so it's a weird film, but it led to Zack Snyder. So why don't we do this for purposes of time? I think naturally we'll do this anyway. Let's just kind of talk about for the next few minutes our favorite Henry Cavill Superman moments. Make them Man of Steel, B versus S, Justice League, whatever. Just kind of, Bob, I know you're a fan of Snyder and a lot of those films. What are some highlights of Henry Cavill Superman that jump out at you? Just list some off that you love.
Save Martha is I'm kidding, of course. It's not. No. That's probably the lowest point, I think, for Henry Cavill's performance. Although I'm going to give him some wiggle room on this because there may have been multiple takes with different line readings of the whole Save Martha scene. And Henry may have delivered something else that was more appropriate for that moment of pain and distress and fear. But that was the one that Zack Snyder chose to put in the movie. It's like that scene in Crystal Skull, Indiana Jones, Crystal Skull, where in the trailer he says part-time, and then in the movie he says part-time, and it just doesn't. There's something about the second delivery that was actually in the movie that doesn't work as well as the line that was used in the trailer. But but as far as Henry Cavill's performance, it's weird to say it. I love that last moment where he's arrived at the Daily Planet and Lois says, literally, welcome to the planet. And he gives that smile. And then we cut to black, cut to credits. And then the score comes up, the Hans Zimmer score. I also like
Bob
the scene.
Stole mine. So.
Oh, really? Did I? Okay.
well, that's why I flipped you guys. I'm like, y'all are obviously on the same page. I got to give him a little bit of let him go first for once. Cause
I read your mind, Zaki, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to steal one of his. I also, I always find this to be entertaining when, and it happens off screen, but still. The scene where Kal-El is working in the bar and that guy is trying to, mix it up with them, and then he goes out and destroys that guy's truck. I love that reveal where we finally see the truck, see what he's done to that guy's truck, and it's all at once destructive and really creative. It's like an art piece that he does with the telephone poles jammed through it, and it's kind of sitting on its end, and I love that. And there are lots of little moments that I'm probably forgetting. I like the scene in BVS that Freak was talking about earlier, where Clark meets Bruce at the party, and that's a great little moment. But I think one of the things that and this was the same with Zack Snyder's Justice League. I think Henry Cavill got deprived of a lot of emotional moments that could have been. There were some great moments with Diane Lane that were nice little things like that, but there were no moments for Henry Cavill that kind of harkened back to the moments that Christopher Reeve had. There wasn't a transformation moment that we saw with Christopher Reeve becoming Superman and then going back to Clark Kent all in one take. So I try not to disparage Henry Cavill for that. These are all filmmaking choices. And so, but I mean, I obviously love these movies. I'm not a gigantic Zack Snyder disciple, but I like that sequence of 3 movies, mainly because I've talked about this many times on this show before, that I like that they were different. I like that he took a different approach than what was popular at the time, because it could have been very easy from the get-go to do something like what Marvel was doing, or what we eventually saw with the Joss Whedon cut of Justice League, something that was lighter and more colorful and things like that. I like that Zack Snyder had the guts to go forward and do something that was a little darker, that had tones of the Nolan verse, and brought that into the thing, as well as his own instincts on top of that too. So I try to give those movies a little bit of wiggle room.
Yeah, and I'll just implement my favorite stuff with the conversation about y'all's on this one. So one of my favorite moments of him is actually at the end as Superman of Man of Steel, when he's talking to the general or colonel or whatever, and says, "We're going to
Oh
do
yeah,
this.
yeah,
I'm here to help. That's why I'm here. I'm from frickin' Kansas, dude. All right, that's a
yeah,
great line.
yeah. That is thank you. That is a good line.
It's his attitude toward it. It's a really great Superman moment. And then I obviously didn't like the direction that he went in with B versus S. There's some stuff in there that I like of him, but I know that we want to bash the Joss Whedon Justice League film, and I watched it recently with my 10-year-old, and that was a lot more 10-year-old friendly than the Snyder cut. It's shorter, but B, it's just but it's not good, and it has not aged well at all. But man, there's some good moments in that film, and a lot of it is the Joss Whedon, because you can tell he's got the CGI lip. But I'm like, man, I know that he yearned for more material of a hopeful Superman. I know he did. Because I say that because he's spoken about it, and he was a damn good Superman and a very cool Superman. And I do wish that Man of Steel just would have had a proper sequel, and we could have given him that platform. Obviously, that didn't happen. And then at the end, the whole Black Adam thing, even just that last scene, I remember in the theater, that was a very drab film for me. I don't remember anything about it. I was just bored. But when he came on screen, I remember going, "Oh shit, I like this. All right, cool." And then he was gone. So his legacy of the character is a conflicting one in many ways. But Freekbass, what about you? What are some of your favorite Henry Cavill Superman moments?
Well, yeah, for well, real quick, and just piggyback on what Bob said, and I obviously mentioned earlier, probably of everything was my favorite scene that I love just going back to and watching again and again, even if it's a little, 2-minute YouTube clip, is the scene where they meet at the party, and that's actually more Affleck than Cavill, because man, Affleck is freaking Bruce Wayne in that scene, man. He's just like, I mean, on lockdown. I mean, that's like Bruce Wayne, that stature, height, like build, I mean, attitude, like F you, I'm freaking Bruce Wayne, like everything. It's just like great, and it was just so good. But in terms of Cavill, probably the most Superman thing in Man of Steel, in my opinion, is before he's even Superman, is the oil rigger thing, when he's on the oil rig and he's saving all those people, and he's got the beard, and he was on the fishing boat, and he's no shirt on, and he's freaking like, dude, like living in the freaking gym, and that's like, looks that it's like, oh, this guy is freaking Superman. He doesn't even need the suit. This guy's Superman. You know what I mean? And that scene, the way it was filmed, like the empathy in his eyes to save everybody, the way that it was acted, that whole sequence right there, I think is just so good. Almost, even that it was Snyder, it definitely felt like Nolan-esque to me, which I think Christopher Nolan was one of the writers on the Man of Steel, if I'm not mistaken. Or he was an executive producer. He was involved somehow.
Yeah, he was executive producer. Zaki, what about writing? Did he and his brother write any of that script? I don't remember.
No, it's David Goyer.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right, Goyer. That's right.
But there's a lot of Nolan in that film, like the shot of the little boy and the flashes and all that. Very, very, very.
That's
Nolan,
great too.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
What about anything later, like in B versus S or one of the Justice League films that you like?
Specifically Cavill, you mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I even like the scene in the Zack Snyder's Justice League when he comes back and meets Alfred. When he's gone for a long time. It's after his death, and he comes back to there. And I thought Jeremy Irons was so great. Was a great Alfred too. On top of that, so
I agree.
So yeah, that whole little sequence is really cool, pretty sweet too as well.
I agree. I like that scene. Actually, I forget about that scene. Good call out.
Yeah.
All right, Zaki, let's end this one with you, my friend. What is your some of your favorite Cavill moments?
Well, so other than the one.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
Oh man.
Oh no.
Dude, we lost you for a second. All right, let's keep talking. If he comes back, then we'll oh, Zaki. Man, we're almost done. He's frozen up. All right, guys. So we got Zaki frozen up a little bit. Well, let's do this. And he pops back on. We'll close it out with him. But this is a really cool conversation. All I know is that I am so freaking stoked for Superman 2 return, and I feel like we're in great hands.
Yeah.
I love the way that trailer feels.
Mhm.
I love
As
the
that have
actor
already been
and
mentioned, you know,
uh-oh.
I don't think he knows. I think
Yeah,
he's
I
still
don't think
Oh
he knows
talking.
no,
either.
he's talking the whole time. Damn it.
But
So
we
that
must be frozen on his screen.
we might be. Yeah.
Right, right.
Well, I tell you what. Hey guys, this is podcasting. It's the way, and this is a live stream, so it happens. Zaki understands. But one thing that stands out to me, and I know Freak, we didn't get into it on this episode, but we love a lot of other Supermans as well. You really like Tyler. What's his last name?
Hoagland, yeah.
Yeah, and the stuff I've watched, he's great. And we really haven't had, except for Dean Cain, a bad live action except for Dean Cain actor playing Superman, except for Dean Cain. And really, I'm joking in a lot of ways, but I mean, Lois and Clark was yeah, but he's gone. Damn it. Was a fun show for its time. But you think about the cinematic Supermans from Reeve to Brandon Routh to Henry Cavill, they did their job. You know what I mean? So many things are directorial. They did their job. Zach, are you with us?
There he is.
I don't know what happened.
we had you froze up, and we were wrapping up because we thought we might have lost you forever. All right, so we'll come back to you real quick as we wrap up. So we didn't hear anything you said. Like, so your favorite
Man, I gave such gold. I can never repeat it.
I bet.
It's one and done. No, the scene when Superman first takes flight, we hear Jor-El's voiceover.
Oh, yes.
Yes, and he's
They will
clumsy
race
with
behind
it.
you. They will stumble. They will fall, but they will join you in the light. And just his initial trepidation, and then his elation as he figures out how to fly.
Mm-hmm.
One of Cavill's best moments. People are like, oh, he was so dour. He never smiled. He smiles there. It's a good scene. And also, I think in BVS, which I'm not a fan of that movie, but when he looks at Lois and he says, "This is my world. You are my world," and he sacrifices himself. Man, it's a terrific moment. He deserves so much better. He got done dirty, and he was not done dirty by Zack Snyder. He was done dirty by just executive incompetence at Warner Brothers.
That's right, and he wasn't done dirty by James Gunn either.
No,
James Gunn needed a clean slate. It had nothing to do with.
Yeah.
He needed it. I mean, he's gonna have his own Batman, which is he?
I'm still not convinced. I may be a lone island on that. I still think can see those with the Clayface thing. That's the one thing that's like, I mean, because Clayface is fantastical. No matter at least the version they're going to do, and Matt Reeves is doing it, or at least he's involved in it. So I don't think it's out of totally. I can still see it.
To me, when I watched the Penguin, it made me believe even more that there's no.
I mean, I agree with you. I see all that. I agree with you. It's definitely even more grounded than the Batman was, but.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm just thinking just purely in terms of timeline. I mean, like if you're gonna, let's say if the Batman comes out in the next one, 2026, right?
I don't want
at the earliest. I mean, you're talking 2028, 29 before the first DCU Batman gets introduced. That just seems like a long freaking time. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
It does. It does. Well, Zaki, anything else you want to add to Henry Cavill? If not, plug away and tell us where we can find you. But any last thoughts on Henry Cavill Superman?
Nothing about Henry Cavill, but I do want to give a shout out to my boy Tyler Hoechlin. I know Freak's got my back.
Yeah.
I don't know, Bob, if you've seen Superman and Lois.
Oh, yeah.
My God, that final episode, I was crying. I had tears streaming down my face.
Me too.
It is
Incredible.
just a beautiful, beautiful series. It's a very special series that I'm hoping people are going to discover. It's this little gem. Tyler Hoechlin right now is my second favorite Superman, second only to Christopher Reeve.
Me too.
Wow.
Me too. Yeah.
And again, it's a show not that many people have watched. So I think now that it's done, knowing that it ended well, I hope it is something that people discover. So I feel we're talking Superman. I have to mention that because it just ended. But other than that, if you go to the Movie Film Podcast, you can see here are our commentary tracks for all 4 of the Christopher Reeve Superman movies, plus Man of Steel, plus the pilot episode of Lois and Clark. If you want to hear me talk about Superman some more, talking the ear off of my poor co-host Brian Hall, please check that out. And of course, you can find me on social media at Zaki's Corner, ZAKIS Corner.
Yay, Zach, you're so great. Thanks for doing this, buddy. Especially
Appreciate
kind of last minute too.
No, I appreciate you asking. Thank you.
All right, Freak. What about you before you're this giant rock star? You don't talk to any of us anymore.
Oh, yeah, right. Well, you can always find me at one place right now, at least for the next month for sure. TikTok, it's just at Freekbass, FREEKBASS. I live stream there every single night, 9 o'clock and 11 o'clock. That's Eastern time, 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. Pacific. And, next month is going to be some fun stuff coming up. So pop in there. I'm going to be whether I'm from London or I'm here, I'm going to be try to stream it all. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for doing this, sir. Bob Cesca.
I have all the same plugs as Zaki. Everything Zaki just said. That's what I'm going to plug the same thing. Listen to his commentary tracks of the Superman movies.
You guys are sharing the same brain these days. When
Thank you, sir.
Right here. Oh no, it's right there. BobCescaShow.com. That's my Patreon page. Also the Bob Cesca Show everywhere. You get your podcasts, every platform there is, and we're there.
Don't I have cool friends? Like I'm way like these guys. It's amazing. I love these guys. I can't believe they're all here talking to me.
Yeah,
It's
but
so
you're the
awesome.
only one that's played Superman.
Yes.
Yeah.
You actually have been Superman, literally.
Yeah.
I have Once Was Superman on my LinkedIn because it's such a fun conversation starter. That's why I have it there. It is. It is. It's
So
so
own it.
fun. Yeah, it's fun. But anyway, listen, stay tuned on Friends for Work for the relaunch. And for now, just thanks for listening, guys. I'm Dick Shoes on socials. See ya. Bye.